low-carbon economy, and secondly, see if there's any way of building consensus on some of the tough issues. So we're a champion for just transition and also a watchdog, because at the moment I would say we're being more of a watchdog than a champion. And we're chaired by Dave Ray, who's a climate scientist, and myself. And since 2022, we've done our work up and down the country, speaking to people in Grangemouth, the North East, the Western Isles, Shetland, the Cairngorms, Dumfries and Galloway, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Dundee, to name a few. And next week, we will be having our final visit of the Just Transition Commission to Caithness. Subsequently, we've also looked at how low-carbon transition is reshaping specific places and impacting on communities of place and communities of interest, and seeing how actually you can look at this sector by sector, but what we're seeing is the cumulative impact of that on communities who are trying to deal with all these changes at the same time. So the big question now for us that we're going to be looking at in the final year, or the big questions, are can we in Scotland effectively manage the risks posed by the low-carbon transition, both to particular groups of workers and their communities? Can we absorb the impact of phasing down high-emission activities so we don't repeat the harms of closures in coal and steel? And can we grasp the opportunities presented by changes to how we work, heat our homes, move around, eat, use our land? Can we make sure it's not going to be the same people losing out as always do? So I want to just give a brief overview of some of the key messages that we've made so far to the Scottish Government by looking at three different paths towards climate transition: business as usual, crisis management, and whole economy renewal. So business as usual is what we'd say the status quo. However, at the last meeting we had, there was a sense that maybe we're moving backwards and not forwards even from business as usual. And we've consistently advised the government that the status quo is going to lead us into a disorderly and unjust transition. The most obvious effects of this approach, the default as it stands, will continue to fall hardest on workers and communities in phased-down economic areas such as oil and gas production, motor mechanics, gas boiler engineers and livestock farmers. In 2023, we advised the government that the current path will not deliver a just transition, and that despite progress in applying a just transition approach to policy development and planning, at the national level, the tangible benefits in people's everyday lives are yet to be felt. Instead, what we've seen are significant rises in the number of households enduring fuel poverty, a sustained cost of living crisis. And we're now in that critical period for public credibility, for just transition as an approach to decarbonisation and the challenges ahead. And we would argue from here on in, a just transition needs to be used to describe the detailed and specific set of policies, actions and investments that are going to get us to progress along this pathway, instead of using it as a fix-all term with no specifics, no actions and no resources, and not to use it as an excuse for inaction, which we've heard also in some of the narratives. The second possible path is crisis management, which can be reactive, or you can actually try to anticipate some of the changes that are coming, and if you anticipate, you're more likely to succeed. The sooner the better, really. On Grangemouth and for the North Sea, proper transition plans have been needed for over a decade. These changes were foreseeable. We said that all Scotland's high-emitting industry sites need just transition plans, from Mossmorran to Sullomvoe. There shouldn't be a cliff edge. We know what's coming, and we need to make sure workers stay in Scotland, giving them a credible set of options for good new jobs and serious offer of skills and training. And in our last annual report, we advised the government it needs to get ahead of the potential jobs gap. And a hallmark of a just transition success is consistent, properly resourced process to plan to prevent the jobs gap, where that's present and where we can see it's going to be a future risk. Jobs gaps occur when a reduction in one form of economic activity puts people out of work without a credible or timeous route out into other employment for them. And we think there's some obvious steps the government could be taking. They could look at measures to ensure growth industries such as renewables and retrofit have got proper worker protections, collective bargaining to safeguard job quality. We can make sure we keep the full value of the new infrastructure by building up supply chains and manufacturing in Scotland. We should be setting conditionality on all public investment that goes into alleviating industrial crises, for example, Grangemouth, and that conditionality has to look at delivering long-term social, economic and environmental returns. We shouldn't be handing money over to them and not expecting anything in return. We should expand public ownership of relevant resources, whether at national, regional, municipal or community level. And we need to take steps to tackle and address the inequalities in workforces. The scale of this transition is such, diversity and equality are not nice to haves. They need to be central from the start if we're to grow the workforce we need. And when we've been around the country, this has been a key concern for young people we've spoken to, from Shetland down to Dumfries and Galloway. In my day job, when we speak to single parents about their concerns and aspirations for their children, their concerns are that they're going to miss out on the opportunities this transition can bring, because those opportunities aren't going to be for those who are traditionally excluded from the labour market. So we need to look at how we widen access, not reduce it. And so done well, a crisis management approach would limit the immediate danger and give greater time and autonomy to workers over their futures. But what this doesn't do, this crisis management approach, is address the long-term economic opportunities that could come through a whole economy renewal, something that's transformative. So in Scotland, we would argue we're doing our bit to tackle the climate emergency and adapt to the seismic changes in our economy. But I believe there was a motion earlier talking about the need for credible plans. Well, we need credible plans, good plans that can help fire economic and social renewal we so badly need, and they have to be developed collaboratively with those that are most impacted, not written from a policy perspective somewhere far away. And actually, equity and justice is something that has to be in there from the beginning. You can't retrofit equity and justice into industrial transitions. It's got to be central. I mean, at the moment, if we look at the data, Scotland's reduced emissions, expanded renewable power generation over the past 2 decades, but there's also a clear and unmistakable pattern of little progress on child poverty, deepening absolute poverty and social inequality, whilst on full poverty, it feels like we're going backwards at an alarming rate. Where we work, how we keep our homes warm, how we move around, eat, use our land. Fairness has to be priced into these changes as a primary strategic goal right from the start to ensure we make the most of what we have and can in terms of good jobs, new skills, and better quality of life. And for this, we need a whole systems approach. Yes, workers need credible pathways to new roles as oil and gas phases down. A jobs gap, like we've seen in Grangemouth, is a sign of failure. But it isn't as simple as finding clean jobs for those currently employed in high carbon ones. A just transition needs to look at our economy in the round, including its structural weaknesses. And one of those structural weaknesses that we've identified is our social infrastructure. Scotland's social infrastructure primarily includes care, health, education and cultural services that underpin economic performance and sustain the entire workforce. We will undoubtedly rely on these even more to see us through the climate crisis, just as we did during the pandemic. Essential workers are critically undervalued. They tend to be women, migrants, racially minoritized communities. And the people more dependent on social infrastructure include women, children, people with disabilities, and the elderly. So the path that we see as being most credible for achieving a truly just transition would be the one that looks at the renewal of the whole economy. And we did tell the Scottish Government this in December, and we also told them it was time to power up Scotland's social infrastructure. Because more and more, as we have to also look at how we mitigate the worst excesses and impacts of the climate crisis, we're going to need a strong local social infrastructure, combined with good quality, fair work, that shifts us above the poverty line. A whole economy approach is where we can make the biggest impact on tackling key areas which would otherwise be exacerbated by an unjust transition, like child poverty, in-work poverty. 6 in 10 people in poverty have one or more adults in work, and that rises for 67% of children in poverty. Many of the single parents we work with, 90% of whom are women, share experiences of being forced into low-paid, inflexible work by punitive conditionality and sanctions regimes with little or no opportunities for increased hours due to caring responsibilities. An inadequate childcare social infrastructure, inflexible work patterns are some of what we need to address also as part of this transition. And there's a need to reshape the social contract and have a guaranteed minimum income, offering financial security to all and an income level that we could achieve through a combination of fair, accessible paid work, reform on costs, high quality services and stronger social security. So a whole economy transformation that changes the social contract in Scotland, freeing people and families from the huge financial risks of job loss, illness, disability, growing a family, etc. And this would be a necessary foundation for the transitions we face as a country, with significant opportunities and challenges to come. I'm here to talk about the transition to net zero, but we could also look at the ageing population, areas of depopulation and technological change. So by offering security for all, we can unlock opportunities for all through this transition and address some of those structural inequalities that for far too long have been a disgrace in one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Satvat, for that presentation this afternoon. We've got a small gift for you that Richard will give, so thank you very much. Can I invite Willie Docherty, Chair of Standing Orders, to move the 5th Standing Orders report, Congress.
Congress, Willie Docherty moving the 5th Standing Orders report. Please note that there is now no composite P on Palestine, and we will revert to the original motions contained within the agenda. Please note that these motions will be taken as a group debate, and we would ask movers to be mindful of speaking times. As previously noted, motions which have not been taken within their allocated time block will be rescheduled for this afternoon. The remainder of the emergency motions, that is Emergency Composite U and Emergency Composite T, will be taken in their normal slot later this afternoon. And finally, in order to complete business in a timely manner, can we ask for motions to be formally seconded wherever possible, and for delegates to stick to their speaking times, please? And with that, I move the 5th Standing Orders report.
Thanks, Willie. I take it we agree the report. Congress, can I assure the mover of the motion we didn't take this morning that we will take that motion directly after lunch? And can I ask Congress to be back in the hall at 2 p.m. prompt? We'll open the afternoon session with Section 8, Agenda, Trade Union Organising. There will be a bucket collection for medical aid for Palestine. And as you leave the hall, thank you, Congress.